is the Author Show. I want to welcome you to our extremely exciting interview with Loretta Love Huff, who's going to talk with us today about dissolving disputes. And the book title is wonderful. You got to get the drop title on here, When Off With Their Heads Won't Work. How do you do, Loretta?
I'm great, Raleigh.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
When off with their heads won't work?
That's correct.
Do tell. Give us some more about this.
Well, how often have you been angry with someone and you just wanted to say off with their heads?
Yes, I can remember those days, yes.
But unfortunately, we can't really do that in life. And so we have to come up with some other ways to dissolve the disputes in our lives.
Dissolving disputes, what a wonderful thing. Yes, it's like forgiveness.
It is. It's very similar. That's actually one of the keys to dissolving disputes.
Conflict is pervasive. You can't turn on a radio or a television show or read a newspaper without conflict. So tell us how you got started in this. It's a marvelous thing to do.
I used to work in human resources in corporations before I became a coach and a consultant. And I found that I was spending most of my time helping people who were frustrated with each other talk to each other. I would have employees in my office complaining about their bosses. I'd have bosses in my office ready to fire their employees. And I was, as I said, spending a lot of time helping one frustrated person talk to someone else that they were really upset with.
So besides that, are there other typical types of conflict? Besides not being able to talk to each other?
Well, there are communication problems. It's interesting because communication is both the, or I should say always, the expression, the source, and the resolution for conflict. So communication is critical in the dissolving disputes arena.
Now, can it be written communication, or does it have to be verbal communication?
Well, have you ever gotten an email from someone that sent you off and what made you want to say?
Yes, I usually pick up the phone, though.
Do you? Okay, well, that's good.
And I off with their heads. No. I talk it out on, because I'm a phone. I'm a person that needs to hear the other person rather than write the message. I find that inflection of your voice. I would prefer to have coffee with the person because I'm the inflection, the words sometimes belie what you absolutely are feeling. So I like to have people see my eyes, see my face, see my heart.
Right, that's great.
As it's opening. So I prefer those methods. But I know email is a big teaching tool to teach people how to email with heart.
It is, and that's one of the reasons that it's much better, as you do, to pick up the telephone and speak with someone, because you can say something in an email that just does not come across very well.
Yes.
So communication is one of the issues. Another source for conflict is conflicting goals. You want to do one thing and someone else wants to do something else. Scarce resources are another. So if you are...
Say more about that.
Well, scarce resources could be sitting at home with your significant other watching television and there's one remote. So who's got control of the remote?
Got it.
Or at the workplace, there are limited dollars to spend, and you're competing with other people on who gets money to do particular projects, or who gets the people to work on a particular project.
That's fascinating. I would have never thought of that as a conflict. I mean, I understand that it's a conflict, but it wouldn't cross my mind if I were going into a negotiation on scarce resources that in fact could be, might even incite a conflict.
Well, if you're trying to get a project approved and someone else is trying to get a different project approved and there are only so many dollars to spend.
Yes, I can see how that works. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I can add that now to my repertoire of conflict. Very good. Thank you. Give us another one.
Well, let's see, different styles. Do you know how some people just rub you the wrong way?
Yes.
So we have different things that we value, different motives, different interests in life.
Culture.
Different cultures. There's just a variety of things that make people different, which is what makes the world very interesting. But on the other hand, it also makes the world quite susceptible to conflict.
Conflict.
Yes.
So hence conflict, and then conflict resolution. And that is what you do, is conflict resolution.
It is.
In your coaching and in your speaking, you teach people.
I do trainings on dissolving disputes, because I find that there's conflict is one of the most preventable expenses for an organization, and yet organizations don't think about that. So with some simple training, you can help people build skills to be able to talk to each other so that when these inevitable conflicts do come up, they're prepared and they have some strategies that are likely to work.
And everything is based on love?
Everything is based on communicating, and communicating from what's true for you, what's genuine, what your actual emotions are, and recognizing that you're talking to someone else who also has their own perspective. So that is actually one of the keys in the book, is distinguishing fact from fiction. So very
Brilliant.
often we've got our own set of what we think are facts, but really we've built a story around them. And the other person is looking at the same facts and the same circumstances, but because they're interpreting it from their worldview, then they have a different fiction around what the story is. So when you're meeting with someone and there is a conflict, you want to just at first lay out what the facts are, and then try to understand what the other person's interpretation of those facts were, so that you can then come to some resolution.
How simple. Lay out the facts.
Yes.
Find out how they view them.
Yes.
And how you're viewing their facts. And then look at that together.
Exactly.
It took me a long time to understand that in the beginning, because I only wanted my view. You know,
Because our view's right.
This is it. You know, I'm right. Well, I am right, but you're right too.
Exactly.
And that was one of the most interesting things in my development, was to learn that you could be right, and it's the bit about you can love two people at the same time.
Right.
So you know, people go, how can you do that? And they're more apt to understand that. But when you come to I'm right and you're right at the same time,
how can that be?
I'm not going to allow that. Is you know what comes into it. So thank you. That's really, and it's almost like I've now incorporated into my conflict resolution when I'm talking to someone. Let me. This is what I heard you say. So I repeat. I've learned how to do that.
Yes, that's
I've
good.
learned to say that. Someone taught me, you know, that's a good thing. Hear what they say and then repeat back to them what you hear, because often what you hear is not what they said.
Right, or what they meant.
Or what they meant.
So sometimes even reflecting it back to them will have them hear what they said and think, oh, well, I didn't actually mean it like that. Here's what I really meant to say.
And you know, that's a bit, I think, you know, as a presenter, you know, we get all puffed up and we say words. And it wasn't really what we meant.
Because we're on automatic and we're just speaking and we're not thinking about everything that comes out of our mouth.
And when you come into a resolution of any kind of contract, when you're doing contracts or when you're doing negotiations, I think the same thing. And you don't have to be a presenter or a speaker. You've thought of this for days and days and days and days and days, and so you come into this meeting with a preconceived notion and an outcome that you want, and then the other person comes in with what they want, and
I'm glad that you brought that up, because in the book there's a diagram on page 15 that talks about different ways that people deal with conflict. So some people, you may know some, who avoid conflict. They just would rather not deal with it. They pretend it's not there. Even when it's in their face, they just stick their head in the sand.
yes.
And all of the styles have uses at some point. It's only when you overuse one of them it becomes a problem. Some people are always accommodating. They're always deferring to someone else's wants. Sometimes people compromise, which is better than either of the other two in some circumstances. But when you compromise, you're giving up some of what you want, and I'm giving up some of what I want. And so neither of us really gets what we're really striving for.
Okay, but if we give up the notion of giving up, then we have a better conflict resolution. We have a more open and a more appealing end to the results, because I don't go away going, I had to give that up.
Right, exactly.
So
You
we
don't want
change
to
the
think
language.
Well, and we change the language, and we also change the approach. And so one of the ways that you can deal with conflict is through problem solving or collaboration. And that requires that both of the parties are interested in resolving the issue, and they again lay out all of the things that are important to them, and they try to design a solution that meets all of the needs of both of the parties.
So is it a good thing to find out what's important to people in the list that they've come up with?
Absolutely.
Like what's a tiebreaker, I think, and what can they give up? Do you think that's
why is this important to you? So understanding the other person's motives is also really helpful in coming up with other solutions that may not be apparent at first, but when you know what's really important to them and what they're trying to accomplish, you might be able to come up with something different than either of you actually thought about at the beginning.
I like that a lot. Oh, that is so helpful and so meaningful. For children, for adults, for anything that you get into.
And you
This
would
could
think
be
that children might not be able to come up with that, but children, when you deal with them as though they are thinking beings, which of course they are, they have preferences, they can explain to you why something's important.
Yes.
And when you understand what's important to them and you show them some respect, they'll be much more likely to cooperate and do what you say, just because you're treating them very well.
That is absolutely true. And I thank you so much for bringing us 6 keys for dissolving disputes.
You're very welcome.
When Off With Their Heads Won't Work,
Yes.
by Loretta Love Huff. And your website is?
DissolvingDisputes.com.
DissolvingDisputes.com. Thank you so much for joining us once again on The Author Show. I'm Raleigh Pinskey. Bye-bye.